The silence stretched across Bagram Airfield like a held breath. 3 Navy SEALs crouched behind concrete barriers, their rifles trained on shadows that danced between shipping containers. Mortars had been falling for 17 minutes, each explosion closer than the last. The Taliban knew exactly where they were. Staff Sergeant Marcus Tank Rodriguez pressed his radio mic. "Control, this is Viper 6. We need immediate air support. Grid reference." Static consumed his words as another mortar whistled overhead, detonating 30 meters away. Shrapnel pinged off their cover like deadly rain. "Negative on air support," came the crackling response. "All fixed-wing assets are engaged. Hold your position." Tank exchanged glances with his teammates. Petty Officer First Class James Bulldog Chen shifted his weight, scanning the perimeter through his scope. Behind them, Seaman Kyle Rookie Thompson, barely 22, and on his second deployment, tried to steady his breathing. The kid's hands weren't shaking, but Tank could see the tension in his jaw. Another explosion, closer still. "Control, Viper 6, Tank transmitted again, his voice edged with controlled urgency. "We've got accurate indirect fire. Estimate 4, maybe 5 tubes. They're walking rounds toward our position. We need something in the air now." The response came back cold. "All Hornets are committed to Operation Sledgehammer. Hold tight, Viper 6. That's when they heard it. A sound that shouldn't have existed in that moment, the distant roar of turbofan engines spooling up. Tank's head snapped toward the flight line, his eyes narrowing. Every F-A-18 Super Hornet was supposed to be airborne, supporting the massive offensive 50 miles north. Yet there, through the smoke and dust, a lone aircraft was taxiing toward the active runway. The engine note was different somehow, lighter, more precise in its movements. "Who the hell is that?" Bulldog muttered, adjusting his scope to get a better look at the aircraft. Tank raised his binoculars. The Hornet's canopy was down, but he couldn't make out the pilot. What he could see was the aircraft's configuration clean, no external weapons visible, which meant whatever ordnance it carried was internal. Smart weapons, precision stuff. Another mortar round screamed in, this one so close that dirt rained down on their helmets. Thompson flinched but held his position. "Whoever it is," Tank said quietly, his eyes still fixed on the taxiing Hornet, "they better be good." The aircraft turned onto the runway, engines building to full power. Through his binoculars, Tank caught a glimpse of something unusual painted on the nose, a small emblem he couldn't quite make out. The mystery pilot was about to become their only hope. The F-A-18 began its takeoff roll as another mortar exploded in the exact spot where they'd been positioned 10 minutes earlier. Someone was coming to save them, but Tank couldn't shake the feeling that nothing about this rescue was going to be ordinary. Lieutenant Commander Zara Ghost Nasiri had been staring at the duty roster for 3 hours, her coffee growing cold in the pre-dawn darkness of the ready room. Every pilot on the squadron was airborne except her. Again, the operations officer had made it clear without saying a word directly. Someone had to stay behind for contingency operations. That someone was always her. She traced her fingers along the edge of her flight helmet, feeling the worn spots where countless hours of training had left their mark. The helmet bore her call sign in faded letters, Ghost. They'd given her the name during flight school, she'd been told, because she had a way of appearing out of nowhere during training exercises. The truth was more complicated. The radio crackled to life. "Any available fixed-wing assets, this is Control. We have troops in contact at Grid November Victor 7249. Immediate air support requested." Zara's hand moved to the transmit button instinctively, then stopped. She wasn't on the flight schedule. Her aircraft wasn't even pre-flighted, and technically, launching without explicit authorization could end her career faster than a night trap landing in rough seas. The radio squawked again, more urgent this time. "Control, Viper 6, we're taking accurate mortar fire. position becoming untenable. She closed her eyes and heard her father's voice from 15 years ago. Zara John, sometimes the right thing and the safe thing are different paths. A true warrior knows which one to take. Her father had been a fighter pilot in the Iranian Air Force before the revolution. He'd escaped to America with nothing but his family and his principles. He'd never flown again, instead spending his life as a mechanic at a small airport in Nevada, watching others soar while he remained grounded. Zara stood up, grabbed her helmet, and headed for the door. The line crew was surprised to see her approaching her A-18 in the pre-dawn darkness. Chief Petty Officer Williams looked up from his checklist, confusion evident on his weathered face. "Ma'am, you're not on today's flight schedule." "Emergency scramble," she said, hopping. Her voice carried more authority than she felt. "Troops in contact. How's my bird?" Williams hesitated for just a moment, then snapped into action. "Full fuel, all systems green. She's ready to fly, Commander." As Zara began her pre-flight inspection, she could hear the urgency in the radio chatter growing. The SEALs were running out of time, and she was their only chance. But launching unauthorized could mean court-martial, the end of everything she'd worked for since she was 8 years old and watched her first Blue Angels demonstration. She thought about the small photograph tucked inside her helmet, her father standing next to his F-14 Tomcat in 1978, young and proud and free. The pre-flight took 7 minutes. As she climbed into the cockpit, her hands moved through the startup sequence with practiced precision. Each switch, each button press brought her closer to either salvation or destruction. The engine spooled to life, with a familiar whine that vibrated through her bones. Tank's voice crackled over the emergency frequency. Any aircraft, this is Viper 6. We are taking heavy casualties." Zara's finger hovered over the radio transmit button. Once she answered, there would be no going back. She pressed the button. "Viper 6, this is Ghost. I'm rolling." The taxi to the runway felt like a lifetime and an instant simultaneously. Zara's mind raced through the tactical situation as her F/A-18 Super Hornet moved through the darkness toward the active runway. She had no official mission brief, no predetermined target package, and no wingman. What she did have was a full load of precision-guided munitions and 15 years of suppressed frustration. Tower Control's voice crackled through her headset. "Ghost Tower, you're not on the flight schedule. What's your mission?" "Tower Ghost, emergency scramble for troops in contact. Request immediate takeoff clearance." A pause. She could imagine the confusion in the tower cab, controllers looking at their boards, trying to figure out where this unauthorized flight had come from. "Ghost Tower, stand by." Another mortar explosion echoed across the airfield, visible as a flash of light in her peripheral vision. The SEALs were running out of time, and bureaucracy was about to get them killed. "Tower Ghost, I'm declaring an emergency. 3 American lives are in imminent danger. I'm rolling." She pushed the throttles forward without waiting for clearance. The twin F-414 engines responded with a roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the base. As her aircraft accelerated down the runway, she heard Tower's voice again, resigned. "Ghost Tower. Wind calm, altimeter 2992. Contact departure on 127.5. The F/A-18 lifted off smoothly, and Zara immediately turned toward the coordinates she'd memorized from the radio calls. As she climbed, she switched to the emergency frequency. "Viper 6 Ghost, I'm airborne and inbound to your position. Give me your tactical situation." Tank's voice came back immediately, tight with controlled tension. "Ghost, Viper 6, 3 souls at grid November Victor 7249. We're taking fire from approximately 4 mortar tubes, estimated positions northeast of our location. Accurate fire, walking toward our position." "Copy, Viper 6. Can you mark your position?" "Negative on smoke. Too much incoming. We're behind concrete barriers on the south side of the container yard. Zara pulled up the grid coordinates on her moving map display. She was still 8 minutes out, flying at 480 knots just above the deck to avoid detection. 8 minutes might as well have been 8 hours. Viper 6, I need you to talk me onto target. What can you see from your position? Ghost, I've got eyes on muzzle flashes, approximately 800 meters northeast of our position. Looks like they're set up in a tree line. Copy, I'll be overhead in 7 minutes. She pushed the throttles forward, accepting the increased fuel consumption. Speed was life now, both for her and the men on the ground. As the A-18 streaked across the Afghan landscape in the pre-dawn darkness, Zara's mind shifted into the tactical focus that had made her one of the most precise pilots in her squadron. The same precision that had also made her dangerous to the careers of men who preferred their female aviators to be decorative rather than lethal. But those men weren't here now. It was just her aircraft, and 3 Americans who needed her to be perfect. The target area appeared on her infrared display as she approached from the south. She could see the heat signatures of the mortar teams through her targeting pod, small figures moving methodically between firing positions. Professional, disciplined, deadly. Viper 6 Ghost, I have eyes on target. Multiple personnel in tree line northeast of your position. Confirm no friendly forces in that area. Ghost confirmed. Northeast tree line is hostile. We are south of the containers behind concrete barriers. Zara designated the first target with her cursor, watching as the targeting computer calculated the precise impact point. Her first weapon would be a GBU-32 JDAM, a 1,000-pound bomb with GPS guidance accurate to within 3 meters, more than enough to silence the mortars. But as she prepared to release, something made her pause. The thermal image showed more than just mortar teams. There were structures in that tree-line buildings that could contain civilians. Her rules of engagement were clear, but they were also written by people who would never have to live with the consequences of their decisions. Another mortar exploded near the SEAL's position, closer than before. Sometimes the right thing and the safe thing were different paths. Zara made her choice. Viper 6 Ghost, I'm coming in for a low pass first. Need to confirm the target area is clear of non-combatants. Tank's voice carried a note of disbelief. Ghost, we don't have time for a confirmation pass. They're about to overrun our position. Trust me, Viper 6, I know what I'm doing. She pushed the A-18 into a steep dive, descending toward the tree line at 500 knots. Her infrared targeting pod swept across the area, revealing details that hadn't been visible from altitude. There, thermal signatures that looked wrong. Too small, too stationary. Children, maybe, or civilians taking cover. Another mortar round exploded, this one landing directly between the SEALs and their fallback position. They were trapped. Zara pulled out of her dive and immediately began setting up for her attack run. But now she faced an impossible choice. Precision strikes that might take too long, or area weapons that could kill innocents along with the enemy. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. A true warrior protects those who cannot protect themselves. She selected her smallest precision weapon, a GBU-39 small-diameter bomb. Only 250 pounds, but with the same GPS accuracy as the larger weapons. It would have to be perfect. Viper 6, 30 seconds out. Keep your heads down. As her FA-18 streaked toward the target, Zara felt the familiar calm that came with mortal certainty. She would save those men on the ground, but she would do it her way. The first bomb left her aircraft with barely a tremor. The GBU-39 guided itself toward the coordinates with mechanical precision, while Zara immediately began her turn for the second pass. Through her targeting pod, she watched the small explosion bloom in the tree line, exactly where she'd aimed it. The thermal signatures of the mortar crew at that position disappeared instantly. "Good hit, Ghost," Tank's voice crackled with relief. "That was right on target. I count 3 more positions still active." Zara was already lining up her second attack when she noticed something on her radar warning receiver. A surface-to-air missile system had just gone active, its search beam sweeping across her aircraft. The Taliban had been expecting air support. "Viper 6 Ghost, I'm being painted by SAM radar. This is about to get interesting." She immediately began evasive maneuvers, diving toward the deck while dispensing chaff to confuse any incoming missiles. The A-18 responded to her control inputs like an extension of her own body, rolling and diving through the darkness at 450 knots just 200 feet above the ground. The missile launch came without warning, a streak of light rising from a position west of the mortar teams. Zara pulled hard left, feeling the G-forces press her into her seat as she maneuvered to defeat the incoming threat. The missile passed behind her aircraft, its proximity fuse failing to detonate. "Ghost is defending," she transmitted calmly, as if dodging surface-to-air missiles was routine. In her world, it almost was. But now the tactical situation had changed completely. The mortar teams weren't just harassment fire, they were bait, designed to draw in air support so the SAM site could engage. It was a coordinated ambush, and she'd flown right into it. Another missile launch, this one from a different position. Zara rolled, inverted, and pulled toward the Earth, using the terrain to mask her aircraft from the missile seeker. The weapon impacted harmlessly into a hillside 400 meters away. "Viper 6 Ghost, I've got multiple SAM sites active. This is bigger than just mortars." "Copy, Ghost. Can you still engage the mortars? We're running out of cover down here." Zara looked at her fuel gauge. She'd burned more than expected with the evasive maneuvering. She had maybe 20 minutes of combat time remaining, and there were still 3 active mortar positions plus at least 2 SAM sites. The smart tactical decision would be to call for backup, establish a perimeter, and wait for a coordinated strike. But the SEALs didn't have 20 minutes. She selected her next weapon, another GBU-39, and began her attack run at a different angle, hopping to avoid the SAM coverage. As she dove toward the second mortar position, her radar warning receiver screamed with multiple threat indicators. "Ghost, defending again," she transmitted, pulling into a vertical climb just as 2 missiles passed through the space where her aircraft had been seconds earlier. At 8,000 feet, she rolled inverted and dove back toward the target, using the confusion of her evasive maneuvers to mask her actual attack heading. The second bomb left her aircraft just as a third missile detonated close enough to rattle her teeth. The explosion in the tree line was perfect, another mortar position eliminated. "Outstanding, Ghost. 2 down, 2 to go, but they're adjusting fire. Next rounds are going to be right on top of us." Zara looked at her weapon selection display. She had enough precision bombs for the remaining mortar positions, but the SAM sites were forcing her to burn fuel and time with constant defensive maneuvering. Every second she spent evading missiles was a second closer to the mortars finding their mark on the SEALs. She made a decision that would have horrified her instructors at the Naval War College. "Viper 6, I'm going to suppress the SAM sites first, then clean up the mortars." "Ghost, we don't have time. They're firing for effect now." "Trust me." She selected her remaining larger weapons, 2 GBU-32 JDAMs, and began climbing for altitude. If she was going to engage the SAM sites, she needed the energy advantage that came with height. As she climbed, she watched her targeting pod track the missile launch positions, memorizing their locations. At 15,000 feet, she rolled into her attack dive, both weapons pre-programmed for simultaneous impact. The SAM sites immediately began engaging, filling the sky with deadly streaks of light. But Zara had spent 15 years preparing for this moment. The 2 bombs impacted within seconds of each other, their explosions lighting up the pre-dawn sky like twin suns. When the smoke cleared, her targeting pod showed nothing but crater where the SAM's sights had been. Viper 6 Ghost, SAMs are down, coming back for the mortars now. Tank's voice carried a note of awe. Ghost, I don't know who you are, but remind me to buy you a beer when this is over. Zara smiled grimly as she set up for her final attack runs. I'll hold you to that, Viper 6. 2 more precision strikes. 2 more perfect hits. When the last explosion faded, the morning was finally quiet except for the sound of her engines as she climbed away from the target area. Viper 6 Ghost, all mortar positions eliminated. Are you mobile? That's affirmative, Ghost. We're moving to extract. I don't know how you did that, but thank you. As Zara turned her FA-18 back toward Bagram, she realized her hands were shaking slightly. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by the cold certainty of what would happen when she landed. Unauthorized launch, engaging without official clearance, expending ordnance without mission approval. Her career was over. But 3 American warriors were alive. Her father would have been proud. The flight back to Bagram gave Zara 23 minutes to consider the end of her career. As her FA-18 Super Hornet cruised through the brightening Afghan sky, she mentally composed the statements she'd have to make to the Board of Inquiry. Unauthorized launch, engagement without clearance, violation of chain of command. The list went on. Her radio crackled to life, not the emergency frequency she'd been monitoring, but her squadron's tactical channel. Ghost Thunder Lead, what's your position? Commander Jake Thunder Morrison, her squadron co. His voice carried the careful neutrality of an officer dealing with a potential career-ending incident. Thunder Lead Ghost, inbound Bagram 20 miles southeast, mission complete. Copy Ghost, we need to talk when you land. Tower has been trying to reach you. She could imagine the chaos in the squadron-ready room, her empty chair at the morning brief, the realization that one of their aircraft was missing from the flight line, the calls to find out who had authorized her launch. Thunder Lead Ghost, understood. For what it's worth, sir, 3 Americans are alive because of today. A long pause. When Morrison's voice came back, it carried a different tone. Ghost, we'll sort this out on deck. Good hunting. As Bagram Airfield came into view, Zara could see the cluster of vehicles around the parking area where she'd normally shut down. Security police, squadron personnel, and probably a few officers she didn't recognize. The welcoming committee for her court-martial. She called the tower for landing clearance, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Bagram Tower Ghost, request straighten approach runway 21. Ghost Tower, cleared straighten approach runway 21, wind light and variable, contact ground on 121.9 after landing. The landing was perfect, a gentle touchdown that barely registered through the aircraft's landing gear. As she taxied toward the ramp, Zara could see the faces of the people waiting for her. Some looked angry, others curious, but a few, particularly the enlisted maintainers, looked something that might have been proud. She shut down the engines and began her post-flight procedures with the same methodical precision she'd used for every flight over the past 15 years. If this was her last time in an FA-18 cockpit, she was going to do it right. The canopy came up, and the morning air rushed in still cool, but carrying the promise of another scorching Afghan day. Chief Petty Officer Williams was the first person at her aircraft, his weathered face unreadable as he positioned the ladder. "How'd she fly, Commander?" he asked quietly. "Like a dream, Chief, like always." As Zara climbed down from the cockpit, she could see Commander Morrison approaching, flanked by 2 officers she recognized from the Air Wing staff. Behind them, a group of her fellow pilots watched from a distance. Morrison stopped in front of her, his expression carefully neutral. "Commander Nassiri, we need to debrief this incident immediately." "Yes, sir." "But first," he said, his voice dropping so only she could hear. "I just got off the phone with the ground team you supported. They wanted me to pass along their thanks." Before she could respond, another vehicle approached at high speed, a Humvee with markings she didn't recognize. It stopped 30 feet away, and 3 men in dusty combat gear climbed out. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, Petty Officer Chen, and Seaman Thompson walked toward her with purpose, their faces serious. For a moment, Zara wondered if they were angry about something, collateral damage maybe, or civilians hurt in the strikes. Tank stopped directly in front of her, looked her in the eye, and did something that surprised everyone present. He saluted. "Commander, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, 2nd Platoon, SEAL Team 5. I wanted to thank you personally for saving our lives this morning." The other 2 SEALs followed suit, their salutes crisp and respectful. Around the flight line, conversation stopped. Even the Air Wing staff officers seemed taken aback by the gesture. "You didn't have to come here, Sergeant," Zara said, returning their salutes. "Ma'am, with respect, yes we did. What you did out there," Tank shook his head. "I've been in this business for 12 years. I've never seen flying like that. Those SAM sites had us dead to rights, and you walked right into their trap to help us." Bulldog stepped forward. "Ma'am, we heard the radio chatter afterward. We know you launched without authorization. We know this might cost you your career." He paused. "We wanted you to know it was worth it." Commander Morrison cleared his throat. "Sergeant, we appreciate your input, but Commander Nassiri and I need to discuss some administrative matters." Tank looked at the squadron co with the flat, measuring gaze of a man who'd seen too much combat to be impressed by rank alone. "Sir, with respect, this officer saved American lives today. I hope that factors into your administrative discussions." The 2 men stared at each other for a moment, the career naval aviator and the special operations warrior. Finally, Morrison nodded. "It will, Sergeant. You have my word." The 4 men from different worlds, Navy pilot, Air Wing staff, and Navy SEALs, stood in an awkward circle for a moment, each knowing that careers and lives had changed in the space of a single mission. Tank broke the silence. "Ma'am, I meant what I said about that beer, when you're ready." As the SEALs walked back to their vehicle, Zara felt a hand on her shoulder. Commander Morrison's expression had changed from neutral to something approaching respect. "Come on, Ghost. Let's go figure out how to keep you flying." The debrief lasted 4 hours. Zara sat in a windowless conference room in the Air Wing headquarters, facing a panel of 5 officers including Commander Morrison, the Air Wing operations officer, a representative from legal, and 2 officers she'd never seen before who introduced themselves as being from the staff. The questions came in waves, each one designed to establish the facts of her unauthorized mission. Why had she launched without clearance? What was her assessment of the tactical situation? Had she considered the diplomatic implications of engaging targets without positive identification? Zara answered each question with the clinical precision of a professional aviator. Yes, she had launched without authorization. Yes, she understood the potential consequences. No, she had not considered diplomatic implications when American lives were at stake. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chen, the Air Wing operations officer, leaned forward. "Commander Nassiri, help me understand something. You're one of our most experienced pilots with an exemplary record. Why throw it all away for a single mission?" Zara looked around the room at the faces of her judges. Some were curious, others skeptical, but all were waiting for an answer that would help them understand why a career officer had chosen to risk everything for 3 strangers. "Colonel, with respect, I didn't throw anything away. I used my training, my aircraft, and my judgment to save American lives. That's what we're here for." "But not without authorization," Chen replied. "The chain of command exists for a reason." "Yes, ma'am. And when the chain of command fails, individual judgment takes over. Those men were going to die while we waited for authorization that might never have come. One of the staff officers, a commander she didn't recognize, spoke up. Commander Nasiri, are you suggesting that your judgment is superior to that of your commanding officers? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Zara knew her answer could determine whether she faced administrative discipline or a court-martial. Sir, I'm suggesting that sometimes the situation on the ground requires immediate action. I had the training, the aircraft, and the weapons to help those men. Waiting for authorization would have meant letting them die. Commander Morrison had been silent through most of the questioning, but now he leaned back in his chair. Ghost, walk me through your tactical decision-making. Why engage the SAM sites first instead of the mortars? This was safer ground, technical discussion rather than questions about insubordination. Zara relaxed slightly as she explained her reasoning, the threat assessment, the fuel considerations, the time factors that had driven her decisions. The mortars were the immediate threat to the ground team, but the SAM sites were the long-term threat to mission success. If I'd engaged the mortars first, the SAMs would have had more time to track and engage me. By suppressing the air defense first, I created the tactical space needed to eliminate the indirect fire. And the civilian considerations? Chen asked. Your initial pass seemed designed to confirm the target area. Yes, ma'am. The thermal imagery showed possible non-combatant signatures. I needed to confirm before employing area weapons. The legal officer made a note. So you delayed your attack, potentially risking the lives of the ground team, to verify civilian presence. Sir, the rules of engagement are clear. Minimize civilian casualties. I used precision weapons to accomplish the mission while adhering to RO. Another hour of questions followed, covering everything from fuel consumption to weapon selection to post-mission procedures. Through it all, Zara maintained the professional demeanor that had carried her through 15 years of military service. Finally, Commander Morrison called a recess. As the other officers filed out, he remained behind with Zara. Off the record, he said quietly, that was some of the finest tactical flying I've seen in 23 years of naval aviation. Thank you, sir. Also off the record, you scared the hell out of some very senior people today. Unauthorized launches, engaging without clearance, that's not how the system is supposed to work. Zara nodded. I understand, sir. Morrison stood and walked to the window, looking out at the flight line where her A-18 sat surrounded by maintenance personnel. The thing is, Ghost, the system failed today. Those SEALs should have had immediate air support. Instead, they got hung out to dry because every other aircraft was committed to a set-piece operation. He turned back to face her. You saved their lives, but you also exposed some uncomfortable truths about how we prioritize missions. What happens now, sir? Morrison's expression was unreadable. That depends on some conversations that are happening well above my pay grade. But Ghost, whatever happens, you did the right thing today. As he left the room, Zara remained seated, staring at her hands. Somewhere on this base, 3 SEALs were alive because she had chosen action over protocol. Whether that choice would cost her career remained to be seen. But for the first time in months, she felt like a pilot again. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor to Zara's quarters. She was reviewing her maintenance logs, partly from habit, partly because she didn't know what else to do when someone knocked on her door. She opened it to find a colonel she'd never seen before, a woman in her 50s with the weathered look of someone who'd spent serious time in combat zones. Commander Nasiri, Colonel Rebecca Martinez, Special Operations Command, may I come in? Zara stepped aside, wondering if this visit meant her situation had just gotten better or much worse. SOCOM involvement could go either way. Colonel Martinez looked around the sparse quarters. Standard military efficiency with few personal touches, except for a framed photograph of an F-14 Tomcat and a man in an Iranian Air Force uniform. "Your father?" Martinez asked, nodding toward the photo. "Yes, ma'am. Shot down over the Persian Gulf in 1979 trying to defect. He made it, obviously." "That explains a few things." Martinez sat in the room's single chair, gesturing for Zara to take the bed. "Commander, I've spent the last 18 hours reviewing your service record and the details of yesterday's mission." "Yes, ma'am." 15 years of exemplary service, top 10% of your flight school class, combat deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria, clean record, not even a minor disciplinary action. Martinez paused. "So why did you risk it all yesterday?" Zara had been asked this question a dozen times in the past day, but something about Colonel Martinez's tone suggested this wasn't another administrative inquiry. "Colonel, those men were going to die. I had the capability to help them, and the chain of command was failing. Sometimes individual action is required, even when it violates direct orders and military protocol." "Ma'am, no one ordered me not to launch. The system just didn't order me to launch." Martinez smiled slightly. "That's an interesting distinction. Tell me, what do you know about Task Force 160? Zara searched her memory. Task Force 160 wasn't a designation she recognized from any official publications. "Nothing, ma'am." "Good answer, because officially it doesn't exist." Martinez leaned forward. "Unofficially, it's a Joint Special Operations Aviation Unit tasked with providing immediate air support for time-sensitive operations, missions that can't wait for the normal targeting and approval process." "I see. What you did yesterday, launching on individual initiative to support troops in contact, that's exactly the kind of tactical judgment we're looking for. The kind that can't be taught in schools or simulated in exercises." Zara felt her pulse quicken. "Ma'am, are you offering me a position?" "I'm offering you a chance to do what you did yesterday, but with authorization instead of disciplinary action. Task Force 160 operates under special authorities that allow for rapid response to developing situations." "What about my current squadron?" "Your current squadron is about to lose one of its most experienced pilots to administrative action. Unless, of course, that pilot receives orders to a classified assignment that requires her unique skills." The offer hung in the air between them. Zara looked again at her father's photograph, the young pilot who'd given up everything for a chance at freedom. "Colonel, what exactly would my duties involve?" "Missions like yesterday, supporting special operations teams in denied areas, rapid response to troops in contact, the kind of flying that requires split-second decisions and perfect execution." Martinez paused. "The kind of flying that saves American lives." "And if I decline?" "Then you'll face whatever administrative action the Air Wing decides is appropriate. Best case, you get a letter in your file and continue your current duties. Worst case, well, you know what the worst case is." Zara stood and walked to her small window, looking out at the flight line where her A-18 sat among the other aircraft. After yesterday, she wasn't sure she could go back to flying routine missions, knowing that somewhere, other ground teams might be calling for help that would never come. "What kind of aircraft does Task Force 160 operate?" Martinez's smile widened. "The best we have. A-18’s Super Hornets modified for special operations. Enhanced targeting systems, improved communications, extended range capabilities. And Commander, you'd have complete tactical authority over your missions. No bureaucratic delays. None. When American lives are on the line, you launch, period." Zara turned back to face the colonel. "When would this assignment begin?" "Your orders are already being cut. You'd report to Nellie's Air Force Base next month for specialized training. then deploy with a small team to conduct operations throughout Central Command's area of responsibility. It was exactly what she'd dreamed of when she'd first put on a flight suit, the chance to make a real difference, to use her skills where they mattered most. But it also meant leaving behind the traditional Navy career path, disappearing into the shadows of special operations. Colonel, I need to ask, is this offer because of what I did yesterday, or in spite of it? Commander, it's because of who you are. Yesterday just proved what we already suspected, that you have the judgment and courage required for this kind of work. Martinez stood to leave. Think about it, Commander, but don't think too long. There are other ground teams out there who might need you. After the colonel left, Zara sat alone in her quarters, holding her father's photograph. He'd sacrificed his career, his homeland, and his identity for a chance at freedom. Now she was being offered the chance to sacrifice her conventional career for the freedom to do what she'd trained her entire life to do. The choice, when she really considered it, wasn't difficult at all. She picked up her secure phone and dialed the number Colonel Martinez had left. Colonel, this is